Everyone. For those of you who don't know me, but I think you all do, I'm Debbie Guider, and I am one of the co-chairs of the board. And on behalf of the board, I want to thank you all very much for coming today. We have some important decisions to make, and it's really important that we have as many people as possible participate in those decisions, to ask questions, to raise issues, get them addressed, whatever we need to do here today. So again, I thank you for coming. Lauren Hassard, who is the other co-chair, unfortunately, he's a little bit under the weather today, so he's not with us. So I'm going to try to do this. So we can go to the next slide. Wow, I'm going to have to go to my PowerPoint. So there's just some housekeeping items to take care of first. I just want to make sure that everybody has their voting cards, a red and a green, that wants to participate in the vote today. Everybody's okay? Nobody's signaling. If there isn't anybody, yeah, okay, it looks good, Lynn, thank you. So we have, again, just some housekeeping motions that we're going to work through quickly. One is to approve the agenda, which I'm going to show you shortly. The second is to approve a minute taker. And the last is just to allow all members of the congregation and adherents that are present to participate and vote. Then we're going to go through some proposed changes, and then the reimagining presentation, which should be the bulk of this meeting, I will hand over to that team. Okay, so we can put the first motion up then. So we don't have what the motion is. So I think that, okay, so the motion is that, no, it's okay, we'll do this one first and then I'll do yours next. Okay, so it's just that the agenda be approved. It's moved by John Hunter and seconded by Debbie Tyler. We're just going to do one vote for all of these motions, and after the motions are made, that's when we'll have any discussion, if anybody has any concerns. We can go on to the next motion. The next motion is moved by Susan Storing and seconded by Judy Hassard, that Doreen Hewitson be appointed as the minute taker. And then the last motion is moved by Lori Crossan and seconded by Ann Snell, that all members and adherents of Collier Street United Church are eligible to participate and vote. Does anybody have any questions, want to have any discussion about any of these motions? Okay, if there's no discussion, then we can vote on these motions. If you agree with them, you can simply put up your green card. If you're concerned, you can put up your red card. Okay, perfect. They're all greens. Thank you very much. Just my pen. Okay, next slide, please. So, with the arrival of a new minister and some changes on the board, we've taken the opportunity just to review the Constitution. One of the things about the Constitution is we have said we would review it every 2 years, and the 2 years were up. So it was very timely that Doreen arrived when she did. So we've just completed this process. And there are 3 minor changes that we want to present to you today that we recommend. The first one is, for the last few years, we've worked with 2 co-chairs in the positions. We would like to change this to a chair and a vice chair. Most of this is because it just helps us with succession and planning. It's easier to know that someone is going to assume the reins of the chair rather than trying to decide if there's 2 co-chairs, who's going to leave, who's going to stay. So the first recommended change is a simple one, and that's that we move from co-chairs to a chair and vice chair. The second recommended change is about the terms of office. This isn't a big change. What we had in the old Constitution or the current Constitution is that the term, the length would be 2 years. We would like to increase that to 3 years. It doesn't mean that if anybody wants to join the board in any of these positions, it's limiting at all, please make your intentions known, and we would be happy to have obviously new members on the board, but it just does make it easier as we're changing over, because only 50% of the board can change over at one time, and if we extend it to 3 years, that would be very helpful. This 3-year term can be renewed once or twice, so it does sound a little bit like a life sentence, but we feel it would be better to extend it to 3 years as well. And the last change we would like to make is about the decision-making model. So a few years ago, the decision-making model for the congregation was changed from a majority vote to consensus. And we would like to recommend that we change it back to a majority vote. I think one thing that is evident is that we are very keen to hear everybody's opinion, issues, concerns, and moving it to a majority vote does not mean that that would not continue. If we will talk things out as long as we need to talk things out, but we just really believe as a board that it's a more efficient way to make decisions at this point. So those are going to be the 3 motions that are on the table. So now I'm just going to open it up for any questions, concerns, any of that anybody might have. So it's a majority vote of those present that are members or adherents. We have also opened it up that you can vote online if you choose to. So we have a process where it is sent to myself, Doreen, Lori, and Vicky. So if people aren't present but had a desire to vote ahead of this, they could have sent in their vote online. Just what? Sorry? Actually, we didn't make that addition to the Constitution, but we can add that. Oh, people on Zoom are considered as present. Yep. No, it's a majority vote. So, yes. So first past the post is what the language that I think has been used previously. Yes. I guess if it came to that, when we are at a board meeting, it is the chair, because the chair doesn't usually vote. So at a board meeting, that's the way it would be. I'm praying really hard that it doesn't come to that here today. So I have a lot of faith, but yes, that would be it. Thank you for raising that. Yes, well, it's not well, yes, we are. So we know who is here. We have not taken attendance, but we've ticked off who is here, meaning their names as you came in, and people who are eligible to vote or not. Yes, so there will be a quorum. We will know the number that's here, so that if the vote is close, we will be able to figure out if it's a yes or no vote. No, it's based on who is here and who has indicated ahead of time that they would like to vote. Oh, okay. Well, why don't you say that louder? Because, yeah. Ian's question was about quorum and how do you make up a quorum? And Doreen has a very good point.
So in the United Church, because we can't guarantee that all membership will be represented, you will always have quorum as long as you have a representative of the regional council present. In fact, at the board, if I'm not present, they don't have quorum. So I'm quorum.
You are quorum, right. Does that answer the question, Ian? Okay. Any other question? Oh, Terry? Oh, okay. So if we have, I think we're okay right now, unless there's more questions on that. But certainly, thank you, Terry. When we get to the reimagining part, I imagine there will be more questions, and then we'll use the microphone for people who have questions. Okay, so we're going to move to the first motion then. So the first motion, we're going to change the decision-making model first. It just makes it easier for us to continue to vote. So it was moved by Bruce Armstrong and seconded by Mark Vlad that the decision-making model, which means we are going to move to a majority vote model, be approved. So you can still use your red or green cards, please. If you agree, a green card. Okay, at this point, it's a unanimous vote. Thank you very much. The next motion is about the changes to the Constitution, the other two about the chair and the co-chair and the terms of service. Moved by Anne Snell, seconded by Judy Hassard, that the changes to the Constitution be approved. We're just going to vote on that. Okay, again, it's a unanimous decision. Okay, thank you very much. So now I am going to hand it over to Lori Croston and the reimagining team, and she's going to take it from here for the rest of it. Do you want this?
So before we get started with Edward's presentation, we had a big celebration this week on Wednesday. Collier Place celebrated 40 years, and which is amazing. It was a lovely, Melissa and her team put together a beautiful celebration for everybody. A few people were invited kind of at the end of it just to see the presentations. So a lot of the people who were involved 40 years ago were in attendance, including the county, including representatives from the city, as well as kind of the brainchild behind Collier Place, which was Bill Fritz. Reverend Dr. Bill Fritz was the minister here from 1972 to 1995, and it was his idea, and he did a absolutely beautiful speech that we wanted to share with everybody because it absolutely launches what we're about to do here in the perfect manner. So I'll have our technical people start that up, please.
What an introduction. Well, others have come up and they have said that they are 40 years old. Friends, you're looking at a 92-year-old. And indeed, this week, my wife and I are celebrating our 70th wedding anniversary. So what a great occasion this is. This is wonderful. 40 years of Collier Place. And I am indeed honored to be here, as I am honored with the plaque that is in the lobby. It mentions me. Friends, I always am honored when I see that plaque, but I'm also embarrassed because it does take more than one person to build a place like Collier Place. So permit me, as I read into the record, those who were instrumental, visionaries, hard workers in the building of Collier Place. Bert Cook, Bud Coburn, Millet Salter, Bob Sargent, Jack Kane, Daisy Eady, Leona Minikin, Al Pertula, John Winchester, Murray Minchell, Gary Walters. So those were the ones who were the workers, the visionaries. They built. Now, these were members of Collier Church. However, there was also one other person that was instrumental in helping us. We were granted initially just 76 units, and we needed more. So, lo and behold, God led us to a man by the name of Bruce Owen. And Bruce Owen took us to Ottawa, to the Prime Minister's office. We met with Victoria Gardner, and she granted us 156 units. Isn't that remarkable? So you see, that is what prayer and hard work does. Now, in addition to that, we did have mayors that were behind us. And back then, it was Ross Archer and Janice Lakey. And I believe that some of her family is on board with Collier Place, so that's wonderful. Now, when we built Collier Place, or before we built it, we did have pushback. Some of that pushback came back from the congregation itself. There were those people who said, why should the church be involved in housing? Let the government do it. But then we also had fierce opposition from the local community. But that opposition sometimes had some humor in it, because as we presented the picture of Collier Place, one of the objectors said, but we're going to have helicopters flying into that building. So that was just in the 1980s. So here we are in, 2026. And I see high-rises that have high-rises and high-rises piled on top of them. That is what is becoming of Barrie. So Barrie is a great city, a great community. So Collier Place happened with a lot of hard work, a lot of prayer, but also a lot of fun as well. So friends, 40 years ago, yes, there was a housing crisis for seniors. Seniors could not find affordable housing that was within the margins of Barrie. So now we have this wonderful community, a community, and that is so much needed in our society today. So many need community. So friends, we've come full circle, haven't we? Because 40 years ago, we needed housing for seniors. Now, we need affordable housing just about for everybody. So let this be a challenge to this community and all other communities, to churches, to service groups, and to people of goodwill, to look after the needs of the community and to build communities within communities. So God bless you all as you celebrate, and we enjoy the celebration. Amen.
On here. He does not know about our project. We haven't been keeping up to speed or anything like that. So that was divine intervention, and I think that we are up to the challenge. So on that note, I am going to welcome Edward to come up and tell us about what that could look like.
I don't think I need to say anything. Bill said it all. Let's vote. Good to be back. I saw, I think, most of you when Hunter and I were here in September. A lot has happened, a lot of meetings, almost weekly and several times a week, no less. So I've put together a little presentation of where we kind of started at the beginning of the process and some of the changes to the market and programs for putting together something like this that have come together. So on the agenda slide, next one, please. This is all fancy. It's there and there. This is nice. I didn't even need. We can slip to the agenda slide. The next one. Maybe. There we go. So here's the agenda. Where we started, the game-changing opportunity that the federal government put in place, the revised direction from what we talked about when I was here last. What does Collier Street United Church get? Some kind of highlights of risk management, the ask, and the timeline. Next slide, please. Next slide. So this is where we started. So The Reimagining Committee went through a competitive RFP process last year, and at the end of the day, A Good Life was selected, and we sat here in September and voted to proceed with that. And along the way, the Reimagining team has had all sorts of small group meetings with the congregation to kind of hear the concerns, hear the hopes, hear the dreams, and together we've kind of evolved to where we are today. Next slide, please. The original vision when we were here in September together was more of a market project with some affordability, so 80% market rental, and 20% affordable with street level community program space and local business space. Next slide, please. What the market told us from then to now, and it was kind of underway at the time, was, and we're now seeing bailouts from the federal and provincial government, but there's been a supply surge of unaffordable units, which has caused a lot of problems in the private market, as well as the construction world in general. Costs have escalated significantly, which has made returns for a private development very difficult to achieve. And as a result of projects running into trouble in southwestern Ontario and the Lower Mainland, CMHC has tightened a lot of the programs and made it very, very difficult to do a market program under the original concept that we were looking at. And then last year, the federal government changed their immigration policies dramatically, which was partly feeding the rental frenzy of construction across Canada. And with immigration numbers being tailed back, we're now seeing surges in vacancy rates. It's not helping the affordability side of the equation, but we're seeing surges in vacancy rates on market units. Next slide, please. So the game-changing opportunity that was announced or launched September 14th, so just after we were all together last, was the creation of Build Canada Homes and $13 billion worth of federal capitalization across Canada. Next slide, please. Build Canada Homes is meant to cut down the red tape that CMHC was. CMHC at the end of the day is an insurer that was then becoming an insurer and lender, and that having an insurer and a lender doing the same thing doesn't really always work. So with BCH, they have grants and forgivable loans. Certain Ontario cities are high priority, which includes Barrie. And what Build Canada Homes wants to see is the private sector, the nonprofit sector, and government coming together to put together proposals and create housing. Next slide, please. So the partnership model, private developer, Collier Street United Church with the land, government, so the federal Build Canada Homes, province of Ontario's housing programs, and the city of Barrie with municipal approvals and incentives such as development cost charge waivers, accelerated approval timelines, and then the nonprofit sector, community and housing partners. Well, the slide says to be confirmed. We have had a number of conversations with a number of different nonprofits, and there will be a couple involved in this project should we be moving forward, but Collier Place Board of Directors approved proceeding with a letter of intent this past week, so we will be working closely with them as part of the next steps. The revised direction, before we go to the slide with pictures, I want to caveat that there are some renderings of what this could look like. We'll call them artistic renderings. They are not the final vision. They're to give the congregation a visual of what it could look like. One of the things that we discussed going through kind of the process was obvious. And one of the questions I got a lot of after the presentation last time was this building and the stained glass windows being protected, and how do we protect the sanctuary during construction, and also looking forward into the future. And if you kind of look at the overall timeline, 40 years ago, the church was involved in the creation of Collier Place. 40 years later, we're looking at a next iteration, and perhaps in another 20 or 40 years, there'll be another opportunity. So we decided to leave the parking lot to my right as a parking lot, and reimagine or reconfigure the entry to Collier Place, as well as the new building that we'll be proposing where the annex is, that will create more parking and more efficiency for both Collier Street United as well as Collier Place. So if we want to slip to the next one more. There we go. Heritage Sanctuary preserved, retained, and restored in what we can do during construction. Things like the stained glass windows, no different when Collier Place was constructed. And I know Lori saw a whole bunch of pictures at the 40-year anniversary there of the sanctuary with stained glass windows covered in plywood to protect it. And then demolishing the annex, which is the big part of what this proposal is now, and replacing it with a 3-story podium that will house some units, some above-grade parking, commercial retail, a social purpose community hub. Atop the podium will be approximately a 12-story residential tower, and the roof of the podium will serve as additional amenity space to residents and potentially childcare space. The residential tower will have a mix of somewhere between 175 and 216 units. The mix will be subject to more detailed market study, working with nonprofit partners to figure out exactly what the needs are, and then switching, instead of 80% market, 20% affordable, having it 50% market and 50% affordable. Next slide, please. Here's, again, a couple artistic renderings of what this could look like, and maintaining the separation between the new podium and tower and the sanctuary that can be then activated for additional community space down the road. So project structure. Next slide, please. So I know parking's a big one. I've heard it from the congregation. I've heard it from the Reimagine Committee. I've heard it from some nonprofits. So I'm starting the next part off with talking about the costs of parking. So a surface parking stall costs, once you factor in everything, believe it or not, around $20,000 a parking stall. As I mentioned, the plan is to keep the parking lot to my right, your left, and add additional stalls with reconfiguring the access to Collier Place off of points. Underground parking. So there'll be one level of underground parking underneath the podium and the tower. The cost of one level of underground parking, plus the premium to ensure that there's no damage to the sanctuary, is between $195 and $245 a square foot, or between $65,000 and $82,000 a parking stall. So approximately 50 to 60 parking stalls would be able to be on one level of underground. So for a broad context, that's between $3.9 and $4.9 million for 60 parking stalls underground. You go below one level, the costs times those numbers by 1.5. We're imagining some above-grade parking, as many new projects in Barrie have, including the building that I can only assume Bill was referring to, of a high-rise on top of a high-rise, the new one that kind of changes as it goes up. Stall costs above grade are somewhere between $39,000 and $58,000 a stall, depending on design parameters and structural requirements. We can fit another 60 to 80 stalls, depending on exactly how that's configured. And that would be between $3.1 and $4.6 million of cost. Next slide, please. So another big question. What is affordable housing? So the housing continuum, as we kind of call it in the development world, you have the parts of the housing continuum that Simcoe County and the city of Barrie are more heavily involved with, and that is the unhoused, low barrier shelter, those without stable permanent housing, including people in shelters, and on the street or in temporary and unsafe situations. Transitional housing, which is time-limited housing, typically between 3 and 24 months, paired with intensive social services supports, bridging emergency shelter to permanent housing. And then the more public-facing social housing, which is predominantly run by government, such as the Simcoe County. And then where we're targeting, which is deeply affordable, housing priced to the lowest income households, typically targeting rents at or below 30% of income for those on social assistance or near zero income. Low income households earning below a defined threshold, often 60 to 80% of area median income used to determine program eligibility. Rent geared to income. Rent is a fixed percentage of household income, typically 30%, rather than market rate, and adjusting as income changes. And then affordable housing costing no more than 30% of gross household income. However, in practice, in this day and age, it's often defined as against market rent, which is 80% of the average market rent. Next slide, please. There we go. So, unit mix between 87, and this number is slightly wrong, that's my bad, but between 87 and 116 affordable units, and between 87 and 116 mixed income units. Congregational space, so obviously with the annex coming down, that's the social space. So in the podium, there would be renewed social space and community programming space for Collier Street United. And then the funding stack is Build Canada Homes as the primary, potentially using some of CMHC MLI Select if required, Ontario housing programs, the land equity, that the portion of the land that would be put into the project would contribute, and then private community-based capital, community foundation, philanthropic, nonprofit equity, and community bonds. Next slide, please. The project financials. So we have a preliminary value of land from a local, we have a preliminary value of land that has been informed by a local appraiser based on other comparable pieces of land, which would value just the component that we would be redeveloping at $5.4 million. Approximate costs estimated based on square foot area, because we don't have anything in detail designed as of yet, of just shy of $63 million. Soft costs, which, and I should highlight the hard costs, that includes a 7.5% contingency on construction costs. Soft costs at $12.3 million, so that's everything from architects to project insurance, city fees, and so forth. And then a finance placeholder of $2.3 million for a total cost estimated of just shy of $83 million. This next slide I kind of already have kind of touched on it, so we can move on to the next one. Funding sources. So County of Simcoe and Province of Ontario, they're driven very much project by project. Digging into a little bit of research, there's several projects that the County of Simcoe has funded in the last 18 months that provided about $108,000 to $128,000 per unit by way of a forgivable loan. So for the purposes of our discussions right now, we've assumed $100,000 unit contribution by the County of Simcoe and the Province of Ontario. The City of Barrie has a program that is funded by the federal government, that the Housing Accelerator Fund, which is currently closed. It kind of comes out each year, usually later in the fall or early in the next year. Based on their historical, we've assumed $20,000 a unit, and then the other piece that the City of Barrie has is a 10-year property tax break, which on the proposal would be approximately $3.8 million. And then we've assumed a community bond of $5 million and additional philanthropic community sources, so there will be some fundraising involved through nonprofit partners, the entire group of $2 million. The land equity, as I mentioned, of 5.4. So our estimated funding request to build Canada Homes will be $44.6 million and change as the current proposal sits. I know rental rates, next slide please. Rental rates are always a big question. Next slide please. There we go. So I've given a range on the market rents, which we'll go through first, and then the non-market rents. So studio, and this is pulled directly off of a brand new project, and I'll caveat a 40-year-old or 50-year-old building. Market rents are drastically different than a brand new building built in 2025 or 2026. So these rents are based off of a recently completed project that's renting out right now. Studios at $1,850, one bedrooms ranging from $2,150 to $2,200, two bedrooms ranging from $2,300 to $2,500, and three bedrooms around the $3,100 mark. The non-market rents that are part of this right now, that these rents are taken on the lower end of the spectrum, so some of the rents will be here and some of them will be a bit higher, but not sitting at the market rents. Studio of $773 a month, a one bedroom of $937 to $975, two bedroom at $1,094, and a three bedroom at $1,433 a month. With these particular rental rates, it creates a gross revenue on the residential of $4.4 million, with approximately $125,000 attributed, knocked off of that for vacancy allowance, and then an additional $1.135 knocked off for operating expenses. In those operating expenses assumes paying full property taxes, which would create a net operating income of potentially $3.2 million on the residential side, and then attributing a low-end commercial rate of $20 a square foot on the commercial podium space of additional $400,000, which would give a combined revenue potential of $3.6 million on the property, on the redeveloped property. Next slide, please. So we will, assuming we're moving forward when the time is right and we have a little bit more put together, we'll have an RFP for the construction manager. As it stands, based on the social impact involved, we have Chandos Construction, which was founded in 1980. They have a fairly significant presence in Barrie and Aurelia. They're the largest certified B Corp commercial builder in North America. And then we have Bertram Construction, which was established in 1934 here in Barrie. And they have over 2,000 completed projects in their back pocket. And then we will ensure that we have one more construction manager in the mix for proposals before we shortlist or before we select and engage that process. Next slide, please. So what does Collier Street United Church actually get? So sanctuary is preserved with some restoration. A housing legacy, Collier does it again. As we heard from Bill before I got up here, Collier Place just celebrated 40 years, and that was a testament to the vision in 1986, and it's a testament to Collier Street United Church has done this once before, and now we're going to do it again. The financial return, so structured and protected. The land equity contribution entitles the congregation to a defined annual return from project revenues, structured to fund programs and long-term mission and create long-term financial viability for the church to continue on. And founding member status, a permanent seat on the board. The revised structure is not a Good Life owning the building with Collier Street United being a minority. It's a non-profit that will own the building, and Collier Street United will have a permanent seat on the board and a community benefit agreement that enshrines the commitments for financial returns, affordable housing, and so forth as part of it. Risk management. To make sure our numbers are actually realistic, once we get into a design standpoint and make sure that the assumptions that I have made, that whoever our selected CM come up with are quantified independently. We'll have an independent cost consultant and quantity surveyor. So they're governed by their own body, and they review developers and construction general contractors' budgets, confirming they reflect the current Ontario market costs, not optimistic projections. The QS also monitors monthly billing once we're in the construction process, verifying no party draws more than verified progress in titles. Essentially, it's a financial referee that protects the congregation and the church. Course of construction and wrap-up liability insurance. So this is a specialized insurance policy that gets put in place once we're under construction, that if something catastrophic such as a fire or something else were to happen, the insurance company steps in and covers the costs of wherever the progress was at and whatever damages might be there. And then third-party independent accountant and auditor. So all of the financial statements will be reviewed and audited throughout the process. Nonprofit single-purpose entity. So once we're a little bit further along, the property rolls into a nonprofit single-purpose entity whose sole purpose is to develop and own the property. As I mentioned previously, Collier Street United is the founding member. The nonprofit structure ensures rents are kept as low as possible while protecting tenants and the long-term financial health of the building. One of the components of having Collier Place at the table with us is they're a shining example of good governance and financial management. 40 years after they open, they have capital that they're looking to invest in additional affordable housing. The initial board makeup will include representation on legal, accounting, nonprofit, development, property management, and construction. As my role is changing from having an ownership stake to more being a hired development manager, there'll be a formal development management agreement that spells out a Good Life's roles, deliverables, compensation, dispute resolution, and full accountability at every stage. It'll be broken out into pre-development, development, and post-development phases clearly defined. Community benefits agreement, a legally binding CBA, enshrines the congregation's rights before ground breaks and cannot be altered without their consent. So that means the sanctuary and worship and community space is guaranteed, non-market housing commitments are locked in, and Collier Street United Church's role as a founding member is protected. And then ensuring that the project has independent legal counsel separate from myself and any of the other partners that will be involved, so that it's getting independent legal advice at every step of the way. The last slide I really have to share is the ask and the timeline, or is the project milestones, and then I'll hand it back to Lori to go into the motions that will be before you to make a decision on. So we have congregational decision, which is today. From there, we have to have the legal structure and agreements put in place, the CBA, the development management agreement, bylaws for the nonprofit entity. Preliminary Build Canada Homes submission, so before we go spending lots of money on more detailed design in the reports, such as environmental and geotechnical, that Build Canada Homes will require. We are going to be submitting a preliminary submission to them, and through a couple of the relationships I have, it'll also be going directly to the housing minister. Later this year, subject to that, we'll be looking into the preliminary design and site study, with aiming to have a rezoning application into the city of Barrie towards the end of the year. Early in 2027, a full Build Canada Homes submission, with the goal of achieving a green light from them. Ultimately, if it was before this time next year, would be great, but mid-2027, with a construction start slated for next fall, 2027. These are all projections and milestones, and things have to come together in a certain way to make that happen. And I know, regardless of what is projected here, that the Reimagining Committee will continue to have small group discussions to make sure that everyone is updated as we move through these various steps. I will hand it back to Lori. And I'll be available for any questions as well. Yes.
For sure. So, do we do motions first and then questions?
Motions first and then the discussion. I just don't know if you want to do, I think we should do both motions at the same time, because the questions will come from both.
Okay, but we'll vote on them separately.
We vote on this.
Okay, so we'll present both of the motions at the same time, but we will vote on them separately, because I think the questions kind of relate to both of the motions. So there was a piece of paper that was handed out to everybody with the motions. I will read through them. Should I read through them? Yes? Anyone else? Everyone? Oh, can you share with your choir members, or can you sit beside someone who has it to share with them? I think I'm out now. So I will read through them then. So the first motion, the congregation, whoops, can you make it smaller? I'll read through it, that's okay. Congregation commitment to the redevelopment direction. This motion represents the congregation's commitment to the redevelopment path as the chosen direction for the future mission, ministry, and property of the church. Moved by Sharon Crossley, seconded by Marnie Neal, that the congregation of Collier Street United Church, 1, affirm its intention to proceed with the redevelopment of the property at 112 Collier Street, Barrie, Ontario, in substantially the form presented to the congregation. 2, authorizes the church board, trustees, and reimagining task force to continue advancing the redevelopment project, including negotiations, planning, partnership development, funding applications, due diligence, and preparation of agreements necessary to implement the redevelopment vision. 3, affirm its willingness, subject to all required approvals and final agreements, to preserve the sanctuary and demolish the annex buildings, construct church administrative space and community facilities within the redevelopment, enter into partnerships relating to housing, shared space, and community use, and participate in governance and operational arrangements involving shared control or shared stewardship of portions of the redeveloped property. 4, directs the church board, trustees, and reimagining task force to return to the congregation for approval for any final binding agreements involving transfer or encumbrance of property, incorporation of new legal entities, long-term partnership agreements, financing commitments, or other matters requiring congregational or denominational approval. So that's the first motion. The second motion, motion 2, development of a not-for-profit entity for redevelopment. The purpose of a not-for-profit entity or entities shall be to support and advance the redevelopment vision previously approved by the congregation. Okay, we need to change that. I apologize. That's moved by Lauren Hassard, and he is not here. Can I have another mover on that then? Judy Hassard? Thank you. So moved by Judy Hassard, seconded by Phil Neal, that the congregation of Collier Street United Church authorizes the church board, trustees, and reimagining task force to work with our developer and the Shining Waters Regional Council to 1, establish a not-for-profit corporation with 3 members, 2 appointed by the Collier Street CSUC Church Board and 1 appointed by Edward Archibald of A Good Life as an interim board. The not-for-profit will apply for resources to undertake key pre-development objectives. The not-for-profit will be authorized to borrow money in its will not be authorized to borrow money in its interim stage. 2, work in partnership with the project developer, housing partners, and other potential community partners in designing the governance and organizational framework of such entity. 3, ensure that the mandate, governing documents, and agreements of such entity explicitly reflects the mission, vision, and ministry priorities of CSUC, and that appropriate mechanisms are included to protect and advance those priorities over time. 4, ensure that decision-making rights and areas of control to be retained by CSUC, as well as those to be shared or delegated to partners, are well-defined, recognizing that some operational control will be shared and in certain areas fully delegated in order to enable the redevelopment. 5, ensure that the governance structure of such entity includes appropriate safeguards so that CSUC is not expanding its risk portfolio and also remains a core mission partner within the project. 6, obtain such legal, financial, governance, organizational, and tax advice as may be necessary to support this work. 7, prepare proposed governance models, partnership agreements, operating relationships, and related materials for consideration by the congregation. 8, return to the congregation and Shining Waters Regional Council with recommendations and proposed agreements for approval, governance model beyond initial interim phase, execution of binding partnership agreements, transfer or encumbrance of property, assumption of liabilities, or any other action requiring congregational or denominational approval. I need a glass of water after that. So the motions are on the table. So do we have questions? I know it's a lot of information. Okay. I can repeat the question. Barb is asking if this is, what is the age population is what you're asking about the proposed podium, the proposed project. So at this point, that will be determined by the partners that are involved in it. We have not identified a specific demographic, right? Age demographic for this. It really is dependent on the housing continuum and what the need is at that point. Yeah. Did you want to?
I'll also jump in on that. Collier Place has a waiting list, and that's, at the end of the day, part of why bringing them in as a partner, never mind their 40-year original, was part of Collier Street United, but having them on board, the idea is to be able to work through their waiting list, as well as serving other members of the Barrie community that need affordable housing.
Just a sec. Just a sec, David. Yeah, can you speak into it, please, Flo? Thank you.
Hello. Okay. I just wanted to ask about the bridge connecting. Will that still be carried on some way for them to come over here?
In some way there will be some form of a connection. The bridge in its current form will not be there, but we will ensure that there's some form of protected access between Collier Place and the redeveloped property.
And if I could, is the parking lot going to be no access to Collier Place eventually?
That's ultimately the goal. Collier Place has legal agreements in place on there. Collier Place bought the first house in behind, and so part of the concept is to create some additional parking there and have all the access to parking. Correct, yes.
Oh, that's a good idea, actually.
So Dave Lord had a question, Deb? Oh.
My question basically is an indication that the sanctuary will be preserved. Is there any mention at all of ancillary space that the congregation needs? For example, the kitchen, for example, a place for coffee afterwards, for example, the music room for rehearsal and all this sort of stuff. Is this being taken into consideration?
So the question was, is there going to be consideration for congregational meeting space, music room, coffee, after church, and so forth? And the answer is yes, that will be part of the first and second floor of the podium and the community and commercial space. There'll be a component designated for CSUC for utilization, and then the broader community, in theory, could also use those spaces when not being used by CSUC.
A commercial kitchen is very, very important to many of us, for sure. Yeah. Yep.
In line 3 of the first motion, you've got related to housing. I would like to add in there that it is seniors housing 60 plus. with the split on affordability and market rents?
So I'm going to interject on that one based on the funding model. Taking it in one direction, solely one direction, is not something that Build Canada Homes is generally supportive of, and that's why we have Collier Place at the table to ensure that there is a component of seniors housing, but making the entire project 55 plus, 60 plus, putting a clamp on it is not something that Build Canada Homes is very supportive of, and creates an uphill battle in terms of getting the funding to even build this building.
I just have a question regarding the non-for-profit structure that's described in the second motion, and as it relates to the presentation that Edward did. Are those two different non-for-profit entities, or this non-profit will manage the other non-profits?
The nonprofit that I was referring to in the presentation is the nonprofit that is detailed in motion 2.
So you'll be overseeing other nonprofit partners?
Yeah. So the number 2 motion, the 3 initial board seats are 2 for CSUC and 1 for myself. As we determine who the additional nonprofit partners are, if we come to a final agreement with Collier Place as an example, they'll have a seat at the table. If there's other nonprofits, they will also have a seat at the table, ensuring that we have legal, accounting, development, and nonprofit makeup of the board in the long run. The motion as it stands is we have to have 3, in essence. We have to have CSUC in control of the board, so that's the 2 seats, and then myself having 1 seat at the board to start the process to be able to reach out to Build Canada Homes and apply for funding and kind of move that process forward. So this is the creation of the board. As the motion stipulates, as we sign partnerships with other nonprofits, we'll be coming back to let the congregation know and have further discussion on that.
So then this nonprofit will govern the others. Will it eventually dissolve and the other nonprofits will act independently, or?
No, well, the other nonprofits will maintain their independence. So Collier Place, as an example, is a nonprofit. They will have 1 seat on this board. If there's another nonprofit, they will have 1 seat on the board. The nonprofit will operate in its own entity, but as it relates to this property, they will have 1 seat on the board.
Will the entrance to Collier Place not be
Can you
below them? Yeah,
use the mic, Flo? Use the mic.
Will the entrance to Collier Place will be reconfigured to over from points?
The parking entrance would be yes.
And the main entrance then?
Not the main entrance, no.
So this entrance will still be here?
For walking, yeah, that entrance will still be there.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Deb had a question over here. Deb, not my sister-in-law. My sister-in-law has a question.
What happens if Build Canada Homes doesn't grant us the grant?
We'll be back to the drawing board and coming back with another approach.
Do those notes on the timeline, do they have to be all filled or part of them filled to include in the request for the funding?
So the items in the time, so you're asking the items in the timeline, do we need to kind of go in that process in order to do the funding in place?
Yes, in general terms, that's kind of how I've set it up, is those steps need to be followed in order to get to that stage.
I have a question. Are you sure we keep in this church?
I don't think you won't let me not keep this church. So yes, I am sure.
I know I want you to hear us.
Ian
Thanks.
Deb, Ian's had his hand up for quite a bit there. Just want to make sure.
Looking at your timeline, I'm wondering about the actual feasibility about applying for a big grant to the feds in early 27 and actually seeing that approved by the middle of, like 3 or 4 months later. I can't imagine the federal government moving that quickly.
From a Build Canada Homes perspective, they're moving very quickly. This week, the federal government announced $3.2 billion in Vancouver to buy unsold condominiums. So I don't disagree with you in respect to the federal government moving at a quick speed, but so far, Build Canada Homes was launched September 14th, and they have shelled out several $1 billion since that time period to get projects moving. So they're motivated to move forward and put plausible, feasible applications. They're getting inundated with applications that don't have even the level of detail that we have right now. And so coming in, following the steps, making sure that we've got all the pieces, doing the pre-submission to make sure that if there's anything that they flag, the idea behind that is to ensure when the final package goes in that if anything, it's more of a rubber stamp than an actual underwriting the entire project. Hence, in the fall of this year, submitting a pre-submission to them so that they're aware of what we're doing. If we were not making them aware of what we were doing and then just submitting an entire package in the spring, the likelihood of getting the timeline is slim to none. By taking that additional step and putting something into them this fall so that they're aware, they can kind of look through and poke their holes that they're going to poke at it, so that when we put that final application in the spring, we've worked through where they might have challenges with what we've proposed.
Okay, so a couple quick follow-ups, if I could. If indeed the fall of 27, you start doing something physical, do all the lights go off at that point? Are we all out of this building in the fall of 27 for a period of time?
I don't see any reason why you would be out of this particular building. You wouldn't have the annex anymore, but there's nothing that I can see at the moment that would preclude utilizing the sanctuary while we're under construction. The previous iteration, when we were in September when I was here last, we were talking about that parking lot and that. Yeah, that probably would have been a challenge, but with this iteration, I don't anticipate you having to find temporary home from a sanctuary standpoint.
And does the 48 million that we see here at this point, sorry, 84 million rather, does that take into consideration any possible renovation work within the interior of the
No.
space? No.
No renovation work in here. We can incorporate that into a scope, and we can have that priced out as we're moving, when we select who we're going to use to build it. And then at that point, that will be a completely separate congregational discussion. But we can look at orders of magnitude of how we could incorporate that in if that's something that the congregation wants to do in the long run.
And just lastly, sorry, there have to be a series of drawings and approvals and concept drawings and all that stuff. That would happen through the fall of this year, right?
Correct, yes.
Start to look at? Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to ask about the 50-50 market versus affordables. So first we started with 80-20, then 70-30, or in conversation, and now 50-50. Can that number go again where it's 40 affordable, 60? Like, are we heading towards like a more affordable building then? Which, I don't know, do they actually work when you have a full building of all affordable housing?
So I would say it's not 100% affordable, it's 50-50 of the goal. Do I see that changing where there's less affordable? No. One of the big components, and I had the opportunity to have some private conversations with the housing minister in January, and one of the things that, from his personal perspective, and he was the Mayor of Vancouver for 12 years. I had an opportunity to work with him early on in my development career, and one of the key pieces that he had instilled in me when I brought this idea to the Reimagining Task Force was having that balance between affordability and market. And if we were having transitional housing or some of the County of Simcoe type emergency shelter, that does not necessarily work in a building like this. But we're talking about our neighbors at Collier Place as being some of the residents. And there's no reason why having seniors in Collier's Place with some 25-year-old young professional wouldn't work.
A lot of information. Lori, you're quite right, and congratulations to you both and all those who've worked so diligently to get this information to us. Probably has already been answered, but one thing or another, costs can escalate as time is expanded. What do you think is, how much money do we need to put shovel to the ground?
So what needs to be secured before that happens?
The entire amount that is proposed needs to be secured
All right. So
before we put a shovel
more
in the ground.
information has to come before that figure can be given.
I've been involved in nonprofit and market projects where not all the money was in place when the project started, and that is the biggest recipe for a disaster on a project. So there will not be a shovel in the ground until all the funding agreements are in place for the total amount that we need, whether it's the $84 million I've presented right now, or whether when we've selected the general contractor and they have gone out to the market and tendered the project and it comes back and it's actually $95 million, well, the project stops and a shovel does not go in the ground until we have secured the money based on that final tender cost.
From the time the shovel goes in the ground and we start this project, what's the estimate timeline for it to be completed?
Optimistically, 24 months. On the outside, 36.
Okay, could certain parts of the project be completed first while other projects are still continuing on and being completed eventually? For example, the congregational space, will we get our choir room back and our coffee room back and our kitchen back? And hey, that part's done first so we can move back into that space while the rest is being completed?
Yes is the short answer.
Okay.
The long answer is that will be something that we need to incorporate into the tender documents and the construction costs. Okay. It is possible on a building of this size to have phased occupancy. Okay. And with phased occupancy, that would mean on the podium, all of the electrical systems for the building would need to be in place, the mechanical systems would need to be in the place, and life safety systems would need to be in the place. And so as an example, if we were, let's say, the 24-month timeline from a shovel in the ground, and it was month 18 and everything in the building was in terms of that, but they're finishing units, we could go to the City of Barrie for a provisional occupancy on the podium space, and then you could move back in. It's all subject to where the sequencing of construction is. And at the end of the day, the inspections from the municipal building department. But yes, that's possible.
Fair enough. That's great. Thank you.
I just want to ask, where will it start? Like, where will the construction start? Like from
That door, in essence, so the entire annex, including there and behind, would come down. That door, no one would be accessing. It would be boarded off, as with all the stained glass windows on that side.
Okay, but the second floor will remain, like with the offices?
No, everything over outside of these walls would be gone, and then the new space in the podium, there would be new administration and choir room and so forth and so on.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Ian?
The community bonds sound like a great idea. Do you have a sense of rate of return to the investors at this point?
The rate of return on a community bond varies greatly. There's another organization in town, Redwood Communities, that we've been talking to, that is in the process of raising $10 million through a community bond. So the exact mechanism, whether we run the community bond through, and I'm working with another United Church in Winnipeg, and we're having the same conversation about a community bond, and in the case of Winnipeg, the community bond would be run through the local community foundation. So rate of return on that will really depend on a few factors that we haven't really gotten into quite at this stage. But it would be commensurate with what other organizations are doing in the community bond space.
Earlier, you said we would have still the kitchen and a choir room. Now you've just said that door is the end.
In the new building, you would end up having a new choir room and a new kitchen. So there would be a period of time where there is no kitchen and no choir room.
How about a bathroom?
No.
Nothing.
It might be an outhouse for a few years.
I just worry that we'll lose members.
That's right.
I mean, from a bathroom perspective, it's 2026. There's some super modern, fully flushable mobile bathrooms that are fully wheelchair accessible. So those are some of the more detailed planning pieces that once we get into it, we will definitely make sure that are covered, because you can't be coming here and congregating and not have some form of a bathroom. So it's something that we'll have to address at that point. But it won't be a blue honey pot. It'll be something decent that we can definitely, that's one of those nitty-gritty details that we'll definitely make sure are covered prior to anything coming down, so that there's something.
So I guess the choir will just practice here.
We'll figure it out. You got it. I think that they're saying pitter patter.
Okay, I think that's what they're saying too.
Oh, Terry, sorry.
How will this work for any outside use of the facility?
During construction?
Probably won't be.
In the future, like what's the connection plan for the podium? And if we were still to have Collier or any other organization use this as a presentation or performance facility?
That'll still happen, and one of the things Lori and I have had is meetings with existing groups who are utilizing the space right now to hear what they need, because that will form part of what goes into the community space and the podium, is listening to the groups that are using the facilities and the property right now, and then also going out to the broader community to see what else is missing that other groups could utilize coming into the reimagined podium space.
Dorothy? Office. Yeah. So offices, so yes, there will be administration space considered for the new, in the new space. Yes. Yeah. I didn't hear, sorry. Oh, when will architectural drawings be available? Is that the question?
Sometime later this fall when we actually start into that, and I would assume no different than the last 9 months. The Reimagining Task Force would be having small group sessions with available to everyone to come in and review those drawings and have discussions, questions, raise concerns that we can then take into account, and as we further the design and get to the point where we're ready for construction.
Okay, so Terry, can you put it back just to motion 1 for me, please? Okay, so we're going to vote on these motions sorry, I know I'm not always heard. We're going to vote one at a time. So we're looking at motion 1. The motion represents the congregation's commitment to the development path as the chosen direction for the future mission, ministry, and property of the church. So we are now going to vote on that motion. If you could hold up your green or red cards, please. Okay?
So I only see green cards.
Yes. So that motion is carried. Thank you very much. Could we have motion 2? You're ahead of me. Thank you. The purpose of a not-for-profit entity or entitled shall be to support and advance the redevelopment vision previously approved by the congregation. Again, your red or green cards. Okay, so we do have
So it is carried. We have one.
we have 2.
We have 2 negatives.
2, yeah.
2. Do you want your name recorded?
For the individuals opposing the motion in the minutes, would you like your names recorded? No. Okay. So we have 2 opposed. Okay. That's great. Well, I would just like to extend a sincere thanks to Edward for that very comprehensive presentation that we received today. I appreciate you coming and doing this for us. Again, words can't express from a board's perspective our gratefulness to the Reimagining team for all of the time, hours that they put into this to ensure that we have a future within this congregation and within this space. So thank you very much to that team. And having said that, all of our business is concluded and the meeting is adjourned.